It has now been confirmed Reading have been deducted 6 points, so how will this go ahead and affect the Championship at the bottom of the table? Reading are now just 1 point above the relegation zone, and there's now so much to play for as there's another player who's well entrenched in this relegation battle. A statement from the club reads, Reading Football Club can confirm that we have accepted a 6-point penalty which has been applied following the club's failure to fully satisfy a business plan agreed after historical breach of the EFL's profit and sustainability limits. The point deduction will be applied to our total with immediate effect. In November 2021, the club were issued with a 6-point deduction for a cumulative breach of regulations, with a further 6-point penalty suspended until 2022/23. So this is absolutely huge news at the bottom of the Championship. We'd all known that this had been coming and it had been rumbling in the background for quite some time, but to now be confirmed, it really lays out what each club at the bottom of the table has to play for the remainder of the season. So as you can see to the side of me, this is what it now means for the Championship standings. Reading falling all the way down to 20th in the table and just 1 point above the relegation zone. 40 points with a goal difference of -18, and we'll get into looking into their upcoming fixtures, their current run of form and trajectory and things like that in a second, but this is really quite grim news for Reading fans. There's no ways about that. In terms of the three currently in the bottom three, I think this gives them a potential lifeline. Huddersfield have been looking good recently, but even to the likes of Blackpool and Wigan, the fact that another team has been dragged down into this scrap with that -6 for Reading, it suddenly gives them a gleaming of hope that maybe all is not lost if they can rediscover a little bit of form over these final few matches in the Championship. Obviously the outlier at the moment is both Rotherham and Cardiff having that game in hand still to come against each other, and until that game's played, they're on a little bit of an uneven playing field compared to everyone else, but this is massively worrying now for Reading. 1 point above the relegation zone, and considering the way Huddersfield have been going recently, you wouldn't back against Reading dropping into that over these next few weeks, and particularly over this Easter weekend, which is going to be massive for them now. So what we can see here on screen is where Reading have been positioned in the league table after each round of results, and as we can see, it's been quite the fall from grace from Reading throughout this season so far. They actually started the season really quite positively, and to a lot of people's surprise, myself included, I had them going down at the start of the season, but thanks to their fantastic home record in the opening few months, they were as high as 6 up until game week 14, which was, staggering considering where everyone had them placed. They were even top of the table at game week 6, which had a lot of people caught by surprise. As we can see though, as the season's gone on, they've generally regressed down to where a lot of people thought they might be at the start of the season, and this recent run of form, it makes for massive cause for concern because of this -6. Reading have been in a dangerous position of limbo recently, where they've not really had any fears of relegation, but equally to that, haven't had any fears or aspirations of going up, I suppose. And because of that, I think we've seen a real regression in their performances, because ultimately there's not been that motivation in at Reading for this second half of the season. Now that they've been slapped with this -6, how does the mentality in that squad shift from, we're pretty comfortable sitting, 16th to 18th in the Championship, to being bang in a relegation battle, and switching that mentality overnight, I think is incredibly difficult. This also illustrates just how inconsistent they've been in this second half of the season. From January onwards, they've only won 2 league matches, which is massively concerning given this news. And for those interested, this is what the league table looks like based on the calendar year of 2023, and this also makes for really worrying news for Reading fans. Only QPR have picked up fewer points in the Championship during this calendar year than Reading have. 14 games played in this calendar year, 2 wins, 4 draws, 8 losses, and the massively concerning thing is the rate of goals they're conceding at the moment. Just 12 goals scored, so less than a goal per game, and 24 conceded in that time, picking up just 10 points from those 14 matches. During this calendar year so far, Reading have picked up an average of 0.71 points per game, which if they were to average from now until the end of the season, that would see them picking up just an extra 5 points from this stage, which would ultimately see them finishing the season with just 45 points, and that has to be sending off alarm bells at Reading. So in terms of what the fixtures are saying for Reading from now until the end of the season, there's 7 games to go, and they do have the advantage of having more games at home than away, and obviously at home this season has been a strong suit for them. Friday's game against Birmingham is absolutely huge, and they need to capitalise on those games, especially against teams who ultimately don't really have anything to play for. I'm going to be watching them closely when they come to Deepdale on Easter Monday for that game against North End, which suddenly I think is a little bit more tricky. Preston have discovered a little bit more form at home than we had done previously. Obviously we got the better of Reading in the reverse fixture as well, and then it's 3 really tough matches. So if Reading don't get a healthy point return from those 2 matches over the Easter weekend against Birmingham and Preston, confidence could just evaporate like that from their squad, because 3 consecutive games against Burnley, Luton and Coventry is where things could get really tricky for them in this run-in for the end of the season. You could then see their last 2 matches as an advantage or a disadvantage, head-to-head games up against sides who are also battling it out for relegation at the moment. Wigan at home, followed by a last game of the season against Huddersfield away, and that could be a relegation decider right there. With the way Huddersfield have been going lately, the fact that they've brought themselves back into the conversation with back-to-back wins under Neil Warnock, that could be absolute fireworks. But I'd be interested to know from you guys down below, from those 7 fixtures that you see on paper now, how many points do you realistically see this Reading side picking up, given the run of form they've had in 2023 so far and the form of those other sides who they've still got to play? So it is worth remembering that Reading have been in this situation before, and they will need to use that previous know-how going into these final 7 matches of the season. Albeit last season they had much more advanced warning. I believe that they were handed a 6-point deduction in November, I think it was, of the last season. Ultimately, Reading accumulated 47 points in the entirety of last season, and they accounted for that 6-point deduction. They went ahead and finished the season with 41 points. Now that was enough for survival in the end, but largely thanks to Derby being also handed a huge point deduction, and let's face it, the likes of Peterborough and Barnsley really not being very competitive throughout the entirety of the season. If we flip over to the relegation battle at the bottom of the Championship this season, I think it's a totally different picture, where the 41 points that kept Reading up in the Championship last season, along with that point deduction, was enough to keep them up. That won't be the case this season. The general way we've been speaking about the clubs in the relegation battle this season, the Championship, has been high 40s is the threshold that I think each of them are looking to hit at the moment. So in the scenario that Reading are now in for this remaining Reading are at the moment, can we see them winning an extra 3 matches perhaps of those remaining 7? I'm really not so sure. We then get into the territory of discussing Paul Ince, and would Reading be in a better situation for survival if they were to part company with Paul Ince because of this, poor run of form they've been on recently? Try and get in the last minute manager to try and get a bounce from them from those last 7 matches. It is worth considering, especially with the fact that each of the Championship sides currently in the bottom 8 of the table, apart from Reading, have changed managers at least once this season, and the majority of them have had somewhat of a bounce since going ahead and changing their manager. So Ince is well rooted in that club at the moment. Obviously he was the man that was brought in at the back end of last season to go ahead and keep them up after Veljko Paunovic had them on a really bad run of form, and he now finds himself in that treacherous position, and I really don't think there are any right or wrong answers with that, and I do welcome some of your guys' thoughts on this down in the comments below, because it's an absolutely fascinating storyline which we're going to see developing in the Championship over these next few weeks. But guys, that will wrap it up for today's video. Thank you very much for tuning in. Like I said, I want to hear your verdict on this one down below. How does it impact the Championship bottom 3 and battle for survival? Who is your predictions to be going down in the Championship right now? Are Reading thrown in there, especially with the form of Huddersfield recently, who we could all definitely see escaping that bottom 3? Or do you still see one of Cardiff, Rotherham or QPR falling into the bottom 3 in place of Reading? Let me know down below. Plenty to discuss. I will be bringing out Championship predictions tomorrow, as we've got a full fixture list coming on Friday, which I'm looking forward to. But apart from that, that will wrap it up for today. Thank you for tuning in. Leave a like if you want to enjoy, and stay subscribed for some regular Championship content. And I'll see you all in the next one.